Welcome back to another rapid rules review on TT Plays, where I work on my R sounds and you learn a few new rules interaction. Franklin back there is eating some fresh shrimp. He's very excited for us to talk about Frostbites, Runechants, Eloquence, Frailty, Ponder, Inertia, and Blood Rock's Pot. So again, going to breeze through all these, try to keep this concise, try to answer all your questions. If you have additional questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. So when Frostbite came out with the release notes in Everfest, it did an interesting thing, and that was the destruction of the Frostbite creates a triggered layer effect. Now, what that essentially means is we can respond to that and we can force our opponent to basically pay for that Frostbite twice, depending on the speed in which they want to interact. The example would be my opponent has a Frostbite, they crack the Frostbite to play a spell. I'm a filthy wizard, I play something at instant speed. If they want to respond with another instant, that Frostbite is still there, because the triggered layer of it destroying is what we're responding to. So by doing that, we're double dipping on that Frostbite token, right? We're forcing them to pay it twice or maybe even 3 times, depending on how many times they want to crack that. An example would be they crack the Frostbite. I respond to the crack of the Frostbite with an Aether Hail, sending 2 damage at them. They want to Sand Cover or Oasis Respite. That Frostbite is still there and they're going to have to pay the tax for that. Right. So again, filthy wizard things, but that kind of set the precedent for tokens doing more than what they initially read, right? Where you're able to get this multiple layer or possible multiple effect out of them. And that kind of leads us into the next one, which is Runechants. Now, Runechants read differently than they play out. And what's important here is the Runechant basically has 2 separate clauses. When the Runechant is triggered, and Runechants have been added a bunch of times, right? But when the Runechant is triggered, there are 2 separate unrelated clauses. One is the destruction of the Runechant. The other is dealing that 1 point of arcane damage. Those are completely unrelated. Now, this is different than how it used to be. How it used to be is when Icelander would scour, you would destroy the Runechants, and the person who owned the Runechants would take damage. Those Runechants then on the trigger would fail the trigger, and no damage would be sent to the Icelander. Now what happens is if the Icelander scours in response to the triggering of the Runechants, those Runechants are destroyed. The controller of the Runechant takes damage. Those triggers are still there. It doesn't matter that they fail to destroy the Runechant. That trigger for damage still comes through, so the Icelander still takes damage. So where it used to be a 6 damage swing if you blew up 3 Runechants, now you're simply dealing 3 damage. I'm not saying Scour is a bad card. Prisms run around, it's a great card. So that's basically the premise of Runechant double dipping. You can also trigger the Runechants, use your Spellbound Creepers, play out Looming Doom in order to send the Runechant damage at your opponent, also destroying the Runechants to put them basically in this stockpile for Looming Doom. Looming Doom obviously didn't really catch on. Maybe Vincent will play it. I don't think she will. But that, again, we can double dip in the Runechant level. Okay, so now let's talk about Eloquence. So Eloquence is kind of the next token we can double dip on. And it says, when you play a non-attack action card, destroy this and the card gets go again. Okay, so that's another trigger, right? It's a triggering effect. So we play a non-attack action card, we trigger the destruction of the Eloquence. We play another non-attack action card as an instant, right? I don't know, Spellbound Creepers is the easiest way to do it. That would also trigger the Eloquence. The Eloquence token doesn't care that the token destroys itself. Again, we have 2 separate clauses here. Destroy this, and the card gets go again. Doesn't care if the destroy this succeeds or not, right? The go again is the thing that's going to come true here. So that's one of the ways you could abuse Eloquence to pick up additional action points. What's the benefit of additional action points? Well, you can ask any Dromai player, anyone who ever uses Chromai, right? It allows you to do a bunch of things you're not normally able to do. There's a lot of benefits to getting multiple action points. So again, we trigger the Eloquence. We respond to the trigger of the Eloquence destruction. We, at instant speed, play another non-attack action card, again, triggering the destruction of the Eloquence again. And if we could, in perpetuity, trigger these, we theoretically could get an infinite amount of action points. Now, obviously, that's not possible, but it is very possible for Viscerai in order to be able to get 2 action points out of the single triggering of 1 Eloquence token. And again, that's not something that people on initial reading, I think, take away from that. Frailty is another one, and this just comes from bias from other games, right? Frailty says your attack action cards played from arsenal and weapons have -1 power. At the beginning of your end phase, destroy Frailty. So, first of all, Frailty is quote-unquote retroactive, and that's a little weird to people. People have a weird concept of when power is set, but basically, like, if you get a Frailty token in the reaction phase, it does impact the power of the attack coming in. right? We don't look at that until the end of the reaction phase. We calculate everything up, and then we hit in resolution phase. Power and damage has already been set, so nothing happens there. So, and if these are given to you on the layer, if these are given to you after the attack step, after it becomes an attack on the attack, if it's given to you in the attack reaction, right? All those frailties play back. The big thing that people mess up on is frailties stack. People always say same name effects don't stack. I'm like, yeah, you've been playing other games. Doesn't happen in Flesh and Blood. If you can get 8 frailties, then you can swing big for 0. They can block it out and get a free quicken, so don't do that. So again, frailties stack. The last thing I want to talk about with these new tokens is Inertia, Ponder, and Bloodrock's Pot. Now, each one of these basically starts with at the beginning of your end phase, and then something happens. Bloodrock's Pot lets you lets you pay 3 or take 2 points of damage. Inertia says destroy Inertia and put all cards from your hand and arsenal on the bottom of the deck. Ponder says draw a card. We have all these things happening, and it's important that the turn player gets to prioritize these however they would want. So if you have an Inertia and a Ponder, you want to trigger the Inertia first, get rid of everything, assuming you don't have a hand, Ponder to drop a card, and then slide that card into your arsenal. If we have a Bloodrock's Pot and no cards in hand, we want to trigger the Ponder first. Hopefully draw a blue. We can use that blue to pay for the Bloodrock's Pot, right? So you can stack these in any way that you want. This is also relevant for like Seek and Destroy if you're playing against like Azalea or something. So these at the beginning of your end phase, same as we talked about last week with the Intimidate trigger and the Heave, right? These at the beginning of your end phase, you're the turn player. Prioritize these however you want. Which one are you going to do first? Think about it. Do it to your advantage because it's a big deal whether you get that, right? If Inertia kills your Ponder token because you don't order them, right? That's a big deal. You don't have an arsenal now. So hopefully use that information to help you out. So again, to recap, Frostbites, Runechants, Eloquence, we can all double dip on. It's not intuitive, but it's 100% legal. Frailty, you can stack them as many times as you want. And then don't be afraid to stack your tokens in the order that you want at the end of your own turns. Hope this was helpful to you. Let me know what other rules you'd like to cover next time. And until next time, everyone, cheers and happy gaming.